Hello everybody, welcome to another video from that one guy that uploads once in a while and has more subscribers than he realistically should have. Today, we're talking about a very special weapon. In fact, it was so special that it caused one of the biggest airsoft dramas that I have ever seen personally among many consolidated player bases, and it was in fact so dramatic that I had to go out of my way and record 20 minutes of me being drunk, complaining about people complaining about it. Yes, today, as you probably guessed by the video title by now, we are talking about the G&G SSG-1. And boy, do we have something to talk about. So like every other gun, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go tip to butt, and at the very tip here we have what is possibly one of the more bizarre Loudner slash flash hider setups I've ever laid my eyes on. So this is obviously meant to be a Loudner, and it does function slightly as a Loudner, but because of these like lightning cuts they've made in here, it's obviously not as loud as it could be. And then they have Picatinny mounts on the top for lights. I have a little Inforce light, or maybe like just like a TLR H1, put it right there. And one on the bottom for the weird people who grip their Speedsoft rifles down here and press down here. Anyway, moving on further down, this is just a block outer rail, which is very smooth, not really any kind of texture at all, but obviously this is just for you to hold on to. As a guy with pretty big hands, this is actually not that comfortable for me. I understand it's made in the effort of shaving off weight, and they have done that, but I think a more cylindrical shape would probably have been better for people with larger grip sizes. But obviously this thing wasn't meant to be tactical. There wasn't meant to be any lights other than the top light, and there wasn't meant to be any foregrips adjusted on this thing, so I understand the decision of it. Moving on further down to the actual receiver itself, the upper is just a very standard G&G receiver. It reminds me very much of a combat machine receiver in terms of like the upper, mixed in with like an ARP9 kind of deal. So a bit of sharp curves, but still very much just an M4 receiver. And if you move down to the lower, it literally says combat machine on it. So this is a combat machine polymer upper and lower that they obviously did some business to. So the grip itself, I recognize from the ARP9. I don't know if the new combat machine have the same grip, but the grip itself is just a slightly like 50-degree angle grip. It's comfortable enough, doesn't really offer any texturing. It's a very, very average grip, which looks pretty cheap and plasticky. And then obviously you got the special SSG-1 magazine, which is transparent and has indicators of how many BBs are left when they circle around, which is cool. It's a neat idea. I don't know how much I really think about my ammo count when I am like speed softing. It's more, I have a feel of how many, like for example in my EPM ones I can have 180 rounds. I have a feel of how much 180 rounds are, and if I'm ever doubting how long I am, I just reload anyway. But it's a neat idea. But this is like the story of this entire gun, is that it is a neat idea that was executed not very well, because they obviously didn't quite understand what their target margin was. So moving on further down the receiver, we have of course the incredibly controversial trigger. Yes, so this is meant to mimic what is known as a blade trigger. For those guys who don't know what a blade trigger is, it's essentially just a very long trigger which allows you to put two fingers on it at the same time, and then obviously in paintball or with HPA guns, because you have two fingers on it, you can tab once, you can tab twice, and then once you learn that rhythm, you can tap really fast. But with the SSG-1 internally, which we'll get to in a bit, it's just an ARP9. Like it's just the new G&G like V4, or not V4, their fourth edition of their V2 gearbox. Sorry, did not mean to cause any confusion there. And that means that this thing can't keep up. Like the engine, like I mentioned in my SSG-1 rant video, is just a normal motor, and the internals are just normal ARP9, like combat machine internals, so it's not a fast shooting gun. And even if you learned how to do this like correctly, I can guarantee you could achieve the same semi fire rate by just doing it with one finger with this stock internal gearbox. So this really isn't a big deal. This is more just a visual preference. Do you like it? Do you not like it? That's it. It doesn't really offer any advantages in terms of actual fire rate with the stock internals. If you put a new internals in there, if you put a Titan in there, or a pre-run or a Leviathan, something with a binary trigger, sure, this could get a bit deadly, but so can my DSG right over there. I mean, you've heard that thing, and that looks like just a normal NPC MP4. So, I mean, nice try, Gingy. But moving on further down, it actually has an integrated drop stock, which I really do like because drop stocks are really useful. Whenever I do go speed softing, I use my Dye i4, and I will soon be using a KLR, an HK Army KLR mask, which there will be a review for, so look out for that. What it means is just that whenever you do cheek weld this thing, it doesn't obfuscate in any way. It's very easy to come down and look over a red dot or just look directly across your barrel. And Gingy even installed an extra screw which you can loosen, and then you can adjust the angle of the buffer tube even further down if you're using God help you, like a Valken mask or something, instead of like an actual mask. Internally here in this space, there is not a lot of room for like a battery. It's a stick type battery. I would highly recommend running 11.1 in this gun. But this is just a standard buffer tube. So you could take a crane stock or something and slap that on there and have like nice battery space. So that's not too much of an issue. Other than that, it's just like a nice 6-position stock, nothing fancy. And that's pretty much it for the actual overview. I mean, there was a couple of weird things they did here. So I mentioned this back on my T6 Ronin review as well, with like these semi-ambidextrous guns. So G&G did it by having a mag release on the left side of the gun and a mag release on the right side of the gun. Great. But they only have this on the left side of the gun, so a selector, which is again just a standard G&G selector, and nothing on the right side of the gun. So again, a semi-ambidextrous gun? All right, well, let's just get to the internal overview, all right? So internally, this gun is not a speed soft gun. It just isn't. Internally, like I mentioned, this is like an ARP9 or a new combat machine. It's a nice gearbox, but it's not amazing in any way. And if you need this to have the performance of like a real speed soft gun, you would need to gut it and put in a HPA engine or potentially a DSG set. And then if you're DSGing, you're getting a new ETU as well, because this is also a stock G&G ETU, which is the one that is inside the ARP9s, which have a reputation for burning out. So even if you do learn how to spam the trigger with the stock gearbox, it's not gonna last you very long. So internally, you would need to upgrade this fully. Like, we're talking a full overhaul. We're talking about new motor, new bushings, new bearings, new air seal parts, potentially new piston, new gear set, new ETU, the works, right? Or you would need to actually put in an HPA engine, which, when you think about it, actually rounds out to the reasoning for the existence behind this gun. Because this gun is cheap. This gun is pretty damn cheap. Like, look at your local retailer site, this gun is not expensive at all, which makes me think that this gun was made by G&G to actually be a donor gun. Because if you look at its very, very close relative, the combat machine, I would wager money on the fact that the combat machine is probably one of the most HPA'd platforms in Airsoft because it is incredibly cheap. It's a very cheap gun, it's a very light gun, it has nice-ish tolerances for the upper and lower, so you won't have too many alignment issues. So I think this gun was built to be as cheap as possible, so people who do play speedsoft and who do play with HPA tank, not necessarily saying that all speedsofters play with HPA or that all HPA players play speedsoft, but there is a large margin of people who enjoy the fast-paced playstyle who do play with HPA. They can pick this up and throw their engine into it. I think that is the main purpose of this gun. And that is also how I would recommend using this, because internally this thing is just is not very good. One credit to G&G, they have added a new inner barrel compared to the ARP9, which I'm a fan of. So the cylinder itself is a 3/4 hole, and they actually added an inner barrel that can support that. And this barrel is way better polished internally than the like tube of tool grade aluminum that you got with an ARP9. So credit to G&G, they have actually tried to do something better for that barrel itself. So good for them. Well, that's pretty much it for the internal overview. All right, so pretty solid performance on the Chrono. Obviously, this is the European edition, so it shoots CQB regulation field blah blah blahs about 1 joule, 350 FPS with your standard sizes of BB. So that's obviously where this was built. Again, doesn't really matter. I would gut this the second I bought it and put something better in it so I could regulate that myself. Anyway, closing thoughts. Was this gun worth the controversy? No. This gun had ignited thousands of keyboard warriors who didn't want their game of military play pretend to be invaded by Fortnite players, and it really won't be this gun that does that. This gun is the first time a manufacturer goes out of their way to acknowledge that there's other ways of playing the game than your standard weekend skirmishes or your milsim events. I think it's awesome that a company is trying something new and reaching out and trying to penetrate a different market. And I think we need to give G&G credit where credit is due. This isn't just another M4. They genuinely tried something different. Will you be overshot to shit by a 13-year-old who picked up this gun? No, you won't. I'd be surprised if he can let more than 10-15 shots off with a stock ARP9 ETU without burning it out on an 11-1. That's just my opinion. Will you probably see this gun in some toxic reels of a guy who had this and a Polish Star Jack? Maybe. But I feel like the community as a whole has been raised above such things, and we're actually slowly but surely becoming serious about the different kinds of ways to play. And I think we should support people that want to play the way they want to play. And I cannot give enough credit for G&G to reaching out and trying to hit a different demographic than the just another M4 crowd. So with that being said, SSG-1, not for me, not for everybody, Marmite of the airsoft world, but sure shit, not a cause for drama. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. Peace out.